Is it recording? Don't use that. So we all know that video content is super important whether you're a brand or whether you're a publisher. It is the #1 way to engage with audiences on the internet, whether it's on your own platform or whether you're using social media. Video is super important. But the problem with video is it's difficult. It's difficult to do it at scale. It's expensive and time consuming because it requires a lot of people to do it. And of course you need to have an understanding of how the internet really works in order to do it as efficiently as possible. So you've got to prove your return on investment and you've got to find ways of creating content as effectively as possible, and you've got to really get your head around how it all works in terms of distribution. Now, social media is definitely going to be a place where you want to be building a content strategy. Not all of it, but definitely a very important place to put your content. And as we said, doing that requires an understanding of how social works, and a lot has changed over the past few years. Spin back 5 years ago or so, and it was fairly straightforward. You would tag your content with the tags that you wanted people to associate your content with, and then you'd need to kind of pick the right time of day to upload your content in order to kind of get a maximum impact on social. And then of course you'd be asking people to follow your channels, and the more people that would follow your feeds, the bigger chance you'd have of the next videos that you upload getting seen by audiences. Today things are a bit more complicated. We have very powerful algorithms working in the back end of Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, for example, and these algorithms are deciding who's going to see your content based on a number of criteria. The reason these algorithms exist is to give a better content experience to the customers on these platforms, to the people that come to Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. You'll notice when you log on, what you'll see on that first page that you arrive on will be a mixture of people you follow, but it will also be from channels that you had never seen before. But it will be serving content that the platform thinks that you like based on all of the data that it knows about you, and it knows a lot. So as a content creator, you want to be thinking, how can I really play those algorithms to make sure my content gets surfaced to as many people as possible? A lot has changed in social over the past few years. If you remember back, 5 or 6 years ago, Google published this amazing pyramid called the Hero, Hub and Hygiene stack, and it kind of became the gold standard for content for a very long time. Hero, Hub and Hygiene was ultimately 3 layers. So at the bottom of the pyramid, you've got your hygiene content. This is what you're going to create the most of. It's kind of always on content. So they call it the push content, which you're creating every day. Very short form clips of content. Then above that, you've got your hub content. These are the kind of recurring episodes that your audience will kind of expect to see from your brand. And then right at the top of the pyramid, the content you're going to create the least of is your hero content. And that's your really high quality content. And you can kind of put an engagement slider down the side of that pyramid, because right at the top, you've got the content that's going to get the most engagement. And right at the bottom, you've got the content that's probably going to engage the least. And that's your kind of hygiene content. The problem with that stack is they're all kind of disconnected content strategies kind of stacked on top of each other. What you do with your hygiene content doesn't necessarily affect how successful your hero content is going to be. They may be completely different things. And what tended to happen was, out there on social, there was this big driver to chase a reach number. So everyone was kind of trying to get as big an audience as they possibly can, as many views as they can possibly get. And that kind of enticed people to really focus on the bottom of that pyramid. So a lot of publishers and a lot of brands were thinking, how do I create a huge fire hose of content? Doesn't really need to engage all that well. As long as I can get that reach number out of it, things are going to be fine. And for a long time, that kind of worked on social. So we saw a lot of people just ripping viral clips, uploading them to social, chasing that reach number, and trying to do it at scale. Well, the platforms have kind of got wise to this now, and have kind of said enough's enough. It's no longer about reach. It's now about meaningful engagements. And to police those meaningful engagements, a lot of the platforms have developed very powerful, very complex algorithms that work away in the back end to ultimately think like human beings, to weed out content that's just designed to get a reach number and actually focus on content that's ultimately good content. So there's a couple of technical things that we know the platforms are looking for. They're looking for longer durations these days, because obviously they want to keep people on the platform for as long as possible. So they're asking creators to create deep content experiences that capture people for a good length of time. So a good target to be looking for, 5 years ago or so was a minute, and now we're looking more like kind of 3 minutes for videos being uploaded to social. So you need to be thinking about longer formats. The other thing the platforms are looking for technically is originality. So they're able to use a lot of powerful tools on the back end of the platforms to scan for duplicate content. Gone are the days of just stealing viral videos and uploading those, or uploading the same cat video that 50 people before you had just put up. They don't want to see that anymore. It's part of their kind of brand safety and combating fake news and all that stuff. They want to see original content, not just the same stuff that everybody else is uploading. So while you can use the odd stock shot or maybe a viral clip here and there, the wider context of your video still needs to be an original piece of work. So again, that's what the platforms are looking for, but again, that's kind of expensive and complicated content to create at scale. The next way your video is going to be judged is, once it's out in the wild, is how many meaningful engagements that video is attracting. So a meaningful engagement is beyond just somebody watching it. A meaningful engagement is somebody liking it, somebody commenting on it, maybe even disliking, that still counts, somebody sharing it. But ultimately, it needs to be content that is getting a reaction out of people. And again, this means that your content needs to connect with people in a human way. It needs to be good quality content. That's all the algorithms are really looking for. So the other thing you can do when it comes to building your content strategy is to think about how the platforms are built as products. And there's a bit of a blueprint we're seeing as a recurring theme across the three big ones, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. If you look at the design layouts, the kind of the real-time story carousel across the top. You've got a lot of those stories constantly being updated on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. And that's where you're going to get the best visibility. If you're uploading regularly into those story formats, you're going to have a good chance of being exposed to an audience there. If you look at the ratio of the number of story posts to the number of in-feed posts that you see when you first log on to Instagram, for example, it's around a 5-to-1 ratio. So you've got a 5 times better chance of being noticed by somebody if you're creating regular stories content. And we call that real-time content. The next step down is what we call make-time content, and that's where you can use the feed itself to effectively ask permission for audiences to spend time with your brand. That's where you want to entice people into consuming your content through clever marketing material. It could be clips, it could be trailers, it could be promos, it could be short pieces of content that are going to engage with an audience. It's not going to be a particularly deep engagement, but this is where people are going to spend a bit of time with your brand. But ultimately, what you want them to do is move further down that funnel to consuming what we call your primetime content. And this is the content where you've put most of your time and effort and resources into creating a deep content experience, which is ultimately going to influence people. And you can use the feeds now on social to kind of drive into that. So you'll notice a lot of smart creators on Instagram, for example, they'll put a really short clip up in their feed, but then they'll have a click through to watch the whole clip of the whole film in Instagram TV. So you've got a short form, kind of very engaging teaser moment and a click through to a deep dive into that content experience, all on the same platform. And you can use stories, of course, in real time to promote that. And that's the way we think about content here at Wooshii. So we're thinking about content strategy right from the moment that we're creating a piece for one of our clients. We're thinking about how do we get the best possible result out of a long-form piece of content. And one of the ways we can do that is designing it from the way that we script it to the way that we shoot it, so that it can be broken down into those shorter pieces to ultimately feed that funnel on social and give you the very best chance of becoming successful with your video content. And it's that efficiency that ultimately drives the return on investment. When you mix it with the right content strategy, you're suddenly able to create video very cost effectively, and you're able to create video that really performs, because we're helping you to think about how do we really maximize the value of what we're doing when it comes to our content.